The scream hit the room before anyone could understand where it came from. Sharp. Broken. Loud enough to slice through music and laughter, like glass through skin. Conversations died mid-word. A fork clattered to the floor. The crystal chandelier above them swayed, light trembling across marble walls, as if even the room had flinched. At the center of it all stood a woman in a simple, modest dress, her back pressed hard against a cold marble table, fingers curled at her sides, eyes wide with shock. She was breathing, but barely. This was the billionaire's wife. Standing, inches from her was his sister, face twisted with rage, knuckles white as she clenched a wine glass like it was meant for throwing, not drinking. Her voice filled the silence, sharp and cruel. She didn't whisper. She wanted everyone to hear. She wanted witnesses. Words poured out of her mouth like poison she had been saving for years. About where the woman came from. About how she spoke. About how she dressed. About how she didn't belong in rooms like this. Each sentence was delivered slowly, carefully, with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. Laughter bubbled from a corner of the room, awkward and thin, then died quickly. Most guests looked away. Some stared. No one stepped in. The wife didn't fight back. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She stood there, absorbing it all, like she had learned long ago that silence was safer than resistance. Her eyes flicked across the room, searching for help that didn't come. She swallowed hard. Her throat burned. Her heart pounded so loud, she was sure others could hear it. She told herself to stay still, to endure, to survive the moment. The sister leaned in closer, her voice dropping just enough to sound intimate, dangerous. She lifted the wineglass slightly, not enough to throw it, just enough to threaten. "You think a ring changed you?" she said. "You think his name erased who you really are?" Her eyes dragged slowly over the woman's skin, judging, measuring. "You're a mistake he hasn't fixed yet." That was when the doors opened. No one announced him. No one had time to prepare. There was no dramatic entrance, no raised voices calling his name. Just the quiet, unmistakable click of leather shoes on polished stone. One step, then another. The sound carried. Heads turned. Breath caught. The billionaire stood in the doorway. Coat still on, ties slightly loosened, eyes calm but alert. He had returned early, and he had walked straight into something no one expected him to see. He stopped just inside the room. He didn't say a word. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't move. He watched. The music had already stopped. Now even the air felt heavy. The sister didn't notice him at first. She was too deep into her anger, too used to being unchecked. She kept talking, her voice growing bolder, sharper. She mocked the woman's past, her neighborhood, the work her parents had done. She said things she would never have said if she thought he was listening. Every word landed like a slap. The wife flinched but stayed silent. Her hands trembled. She pressed them together, trying to stop the shaking. The billionaire's eyes didn't leave the scene. He took it all in. The raised glass. The way his wife's shoulders had curled inward, like she was trying to make herself smaller. The way guests leaned back, creating distance, protecting their comfort instead of her dignity. He saw the power in his sister's posture. The confidence of someone who believed blood and money made her untouchable. Seconds stretched. It felt like minutes. Finally, the sister turned. Her smile was already forming before she fully saw him. A reflex? A habit? But the moment her eyes landed on him, the color drained from her face. The glass lowered slightly. Her mouth stayed open just a second too long. Then she laughed, light and nervous, as if this was all a misunderstanding, as if she could smooth it over the way she always did. "Oh," she said, "you're back early." He didn't smile. He didn't respond at all. His gaze moved slowly, deliberately, from her face to the wineglass still clenched in her hand. To his wife, standing rigid, eyes glassy but unbroken. To the red mark beginning to bloom on her wrist where the glass had brushed too close. Then to the guests, frozen in place, pretending suddenly that they were very interested in the floor. The walls, anything but the truth, unfolding in front of them. In that silence, something cracked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. The thin layer of politeness that had protected cruelty until now finally split open. This wasn't a private disagreement. This wasn't siblings arguing. This was humiliation, performed in public, fueled by power and silence. And everyone knew it. The sister cleared her throat. "I was just joking," she said quickly. "You know how she is? Sensitive." She waved her hand toward the wife like she was dismissing a waiter. The wife said nothing. Her eyes dropped to the floor. That small movement hurt more than any insult. It showed how used to this she was. How often she had swallowed pain to keep peace. The billionaire's jaw tightened. A muscle in his cheek jumped. He took a breath. Slow, controlled. He could feel the weight of the room pressing in on him. The expectation. The test. This was the moment people would remember. This was where power revealed its true loyalty. Everyone waited for him to explode, to shout, to pull his sister aside and handle it later, to protect blood over love, to pretend he hadn't seen everything. Silence would be easy. Silence would be familiar. Silence would keep things comfortable. His wife lifted her head just enough to look at him. Their eyes met for a brief second. In that glance was everything she didn't say. Fear, hope, doubt, a question she was afraid to ask. He took one step forward. The sound of his shoe against the floor echoed through the room. It was small, but it was enough to make everyone hold their breath. His sister's smile tightened. Her confidence wavered. The guests leaned in without realizing it, pulled by the gravity of what was coming. That single step felt like a line. Being drawn, no one spoke. And in that charged silence, with every eye locked on him, the billionaire stood between who he had been and who he was about to become. The room stayed frozen after his step forward, like time itself was waiting for permission to move again. Then the billionaire raised his hand. Not fast, not angry, just enough to be seen. A quiet signal, a command. The low murmurs died instantly. Even the waiters near the walls stopped moving. Power didn't need volume. It never did. The room obeyed him the way it always had. His sister reacted first. She shifted her weight, straightened her posture, and softened her face, like she was slipping on a familiar mask. Her voice changed too. Gone was the sharp edge. In its place came something smooth, practiced. I was just trying to protect you, she said, glancing around as if looking for agreement. You know how people talk. She's embarrassing you. She doesn't belong here. She laughed lightly. At the end, the kind of laugh meant to invite others to join in, to make Krolchi sound reasonable. A few guests followed her lead. Thin laughter echoed from the far side of the room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't brave. It was the sound of people, choosing safety over justice. The kind of laugh that disappears the moment you look at it too hard. The billionaire didn't respond. He didn't even look at his sister. His eyes stayed on his wife. She stood there, still pressed against the table, her shoulders tight, her breathing shallow. For a moment, it looked like she might say nothing at all, like she might let this pass the way so many moments before had passed. But then she spoke. Her voice barely carried across the room. Soft, steady, almost apologetic. I didn't ask for this. That was all she said. No defense, no accusation, no tears. Just a simple truth. She lowered her eyes afterward, staring at the floor like it might open and swallow her whole. As if becoming smaller could make the pain smaller too. That was the moment something shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. Because this wasn't a fight between equals. This wasn't too powerful, people clashing. This was one woman enduring humiliation in silence, while others debated whether she deserved it. She wasn't performing. She wasn't attacking. She was surviving. The sister scoffed. The softness dropped from her voice. Her eyes hardened again. See? She said, pointing slightly, as if the wife were an object on display. He changed him. She turned fully toward her brother now. He turned him against his own family. The words hit the air and stayed there, thick and heavy, like smoke that refused to clear. Family. Word pulled at him, harder than anything else had so far. Images rushed through his mind without asking. Long dinners at a table that felt too big for two kids. His sister stealing food from his plate when he wasn't looking. Their mother's voice telling them to stick together because the world wouldn't be kind to people like them. Inside jokes. Shared losses. Years of history built before money ever entered the picture. Blood was powerful. Blood was loud. His jaw tightened. The muscle jumped again. He felt the pull. The familiar urge to keep peace. Tightened to handle it later. To protect the past, even if it hurt the present. For a brief moment, it would have been easy to step back into that role. The brother. The fixer. The man who smoothed things over so no one else had to be uncomfortable. But then he noticed something small. His wife's hand was shaking. Not dramatically. Not enough for most people to see. It's just a slight tremble, like a leaf caught in a weak wind. And there, just above her wrist, a red mark was forming. Faint, but real. A reminder of how close the glass had come. How quickly words could have turned into something worse. Fear lived in that mark, but so did restraint. She hadn't flinched away. She hadn't cried out. She had stood there and held herself together while being torn apart in front of a room full of people. That silence wasn't weakness. It was strength under attack. The room began to buzz again. Low voices, quick whispers. Someone lifted a phone, pretending to check a message, but the camera lens was pointed in the wrong direction. Another followed. This wasn't private anymore. If it ever had been, this was becoming something else. A spectacle. A test. Would power protect cruelty? Would money excuse abuse? His sister noticed the phones. She smiled again, confident. This was where he usually stepped in. This was where he took control quietly, pulled her aside, promised to talk later, promised to fix it behind closed doors. She had lived off that promise for years. She crossed her arms and waited. Instead, he turned toward the room. His voice was calm when he spoke. To calm, everyone stays. The words landed like a weight dropped on glass. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the door stopped, mid-step. The security team glanced at each other, unsure. This wasn't how things usually went. There was no polite exit being offered. No graceful way out, no hiding. The tension climbed fast. You could feel it in the way people stopped breathing all at once. In the way eyes widened. In the way silence pressed harder than noise ever could. His sister's smile faltered. Just for a second. Long enough to notice. She looked around, then back at him, searching his face for something familiar. For the brother, she knew. For the man who always chose family first, no matter the cost. She didn't find him. What she saw instead was a husband. A man standing beside the woman he chose. A man who had watched long enough. A man who understood now that neutrality was a lie, and silence was a choice. The room waited. His wife stood still, unsure what would happen next. The sister swallowed, her confidence slipping. The guests held their phones a little lower, sensing something bigger was about to unfold. And in that charged stillness, with blood on one side and love on the other, the billionaire stood at the center of a decision that could not be undone. He didn't look at his sister when he moved. That was the first shock. He walked past her like she wasn't there, like the power she thought she held had already slipped through her fingers. The sound of his footsteps was slow and steady, each one landing with purpose. He stopped in front of his wife and turned toward her fully, blocking the rest of the room from her view. For the first time that night, she wasn't exposed. She wasn't alone. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and took her hand. The room gasped. It wasn't loud, but it was real. That single gesture cut through everything that had come before. The whispers stopped. The phones lowered. The sister stiffened behind him. Power shifted in that moment, not because of money or threat, but because he chose to stand where it mattered. His wife looked down at their joined hands like she wasn't sure they were real. Her fingers were cold. His were warm, steady. The tremble in her hand didn't stop right away, but it slowed. She swallowed hard. Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Then he turned. He faced his sister at last, and when he spoke, his voice was calm. Not raised, not shaken, calm enough to scare her. You don't get to decide who belongs in my life. The words were simple. Clear. Final. She opened her mouth, ready to cut in, ready to twist the moment the way she always did. I was just he. Lifted one finger. That was all it took. One finger raised between them. The room fell silent again, deeper this time. Even she knew not to push past that line. She closed her mouth slowly, eyes narrowing, searching for a crack in his resolve. You attacked her, he continued, his voice steady. Because you think money gives you authority? He paused. Let that sink in. Because you think blood? Excuses. Cruelty. A murmur rippled through the guests. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others stared straight ahead, caught between guilt and fear. He let his eyes move across the room, meeting faces one by one. He wanted them to feel seen, accountable. Let me be clear, he said. Anyone who disrespects my wife, disrespects me? That was the moment the sister's confidence truly cracked. She laughed, short and sharp, but there was no humor in it. So that's it? She asked. You're going to humiliate your own family for her. She gestured toward his wife like she was pointing at a stranger. After everything we've done for you. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned back to his wife. No one expected what came next. He faced her fully, their hands still joined, and his voice softened, not weakened, softened with truth. I'm sorry, he said. The room froze. I'm sorry for letting this go on, he continued. For not stepping in sooner, for staying silent too long. He took a breath. He never deserved any of this. Her breath hitched. Tears welled in her eyes, bright and sudden. She had waited so long to hear those words, she wasn't sure. She believed them at first. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She nodded once, barely. That apology did something deep inside her. It didn't erase the pain, but it acknowledged it. It made it real. Behind them. The sister scoffed, the sound sharp with disbelief. You're choosing her over family? She asked, her voice rising. Over blood? He turned back to her and nodded once. I'm choosing dignity. The word hit harder than any insult ever could. Dignity. Not loyalty. Not love. Dignity. Something she had taken from others without ever thinking it. Could be taken from her. Her smile vanished completely. "You wouldn't," she said. "Quieter now. You wouldn't do this to me." He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't explain. He simply raised his hand again. This time security moved. Two men stepped forward from the edge of the room, professional and calm. The sister looked at them, then back at her brother, panic flashing across her face. "This is ridiculous," she said, trying to laugh again, but her voice cracked. "Tell them to stop. He will leave," he said. His tone never changed, and until you learn respect, you won't return. The room was completely still. No one spoke. No one moved. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't anger. This was a boundary being drawn in front of witnesses. The sister shook her head slowly, disbelief turning into fury. "You'll regret this," she whispered as the guards gently but firmly took her arms. She looked around the room, searching for support, for sympathy. For someone to say this had gone too far, no one did. As she was escorted toward the exit, heels clicking against marble, the sound echoed like punctuation at the end of a long, ugly sentence. The doors closed behind her with a soft, final sound. Only then did the room seem to breathe again. Power had shifted. Not through shouting, not through force, but through clarity. Through a man deciding that silence was no longer an option. Through a choice that put dignity above blood and love above comfort. The billionaire turned back to his wife. She stood straighter now. Her shoulders were no longer curled inward. Her chin lifted slightly. She was still emotional, still processing, but something inside her had changed. She had been seen, chosen, protected. He squeezed her hand gently, a quiet promise without words. Around them, the guests looked away, some ashamed, some thoughtful, all aware they had just witnessed something real. Everything had changed. And as they stood there together, in the aftermath of truth, one thing was clear. The underdog was no longer alone. The guests didn't rush out. They drifted slowly, quietly, like people leaving a church after hearing a hard sermon they didn't expect. Shoes brushed against marble. Coats were picked up without conversation. No one laughed. No one checked their phone. Even the music stayed off, like the room itself knew it would be disrespectful to start again. What had happened couldn't be undone with small talk. It had settled too deep. When the doors finally closed behind the last guest, the hall felt larger, emptier. The air was different now, lighter, but heavy with thought. The billionaire stood near the center of the room, his jacket draped over his arm, his posture looser than before. His wife stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The echoes of raised voices and cruel words had faded, replaced by a calm that felt unfamiliar, but earned. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. His voice was low. "Honest? I should have stopped it sooner." She didn't answer right away. She studied his face, searching for something. Regret, resolve, truth. Then she gave a small, sad smile. Not bitter, not angry, just real. "You stopped it now," she said. That was the moment everything settled into place. This wasn't just about a public scene or a family conflict. It was about values finally lining up with actions. He had always had wealth, influence, power that could bend rooms without effort. But for the first time, he understood how empty those things were if they were used to protect the wrong people. Power without conscience was just noise. And silence, he realized, had never been neutral. His sister lost access to privilege that night, the kind she had worn like armor. Doors closed that she had always assumed would stay open. Calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming. For the first time in her life, her name didn't carry the weight it used to. What she gained instead was something harder. A consequence, one that didn't care about her excuses. The days that followed were quieter than usual at home. The billionaire noticed small changes. His wife no longer flinched when his phone rang late. She walked through rooms without shrinking. She spoke more about her thoughts, about her ideas, about moments she had once swallowed because she didn't think they mattered. He listened, really listened, and each time, he saw another piece of her strength that had been there all along. Waiting for safety, the story spread, but not the way scandals usually do. There were no headlines screaming for attention, no wild rumors, just quiet conversations, boardrooms, hallways, private dinners where people leaned in and said, "Did you hear what happened?" And the story stayed mostly the same. Not exaggerated, not softened. A man chose dignity over blood. A woman was protected instead of ignored. Employees noticed first. Meetings changed. The tone shifted. Voices that used to talk over others paused. People thought twice before making jokes at someone else's expense. There was less noise, more listening. Respect stopped being a word in a mission statement and started becoming a rule. People followed because they had seen what happened when it was broken. His wife began to attend events not as an accessory, not as a quiet figure standing slightly behind him, but as herself. She spoke when she wanted to. She asked questions. She disagreed. And when she did, no one laughed. No one dismissed her, because it was clear now. Her dignity was not up for debate, and it wasn't because of his money. It was because he had drawn a line and dared anyone to cross it. Late one night, weeks later, he stood alone in his office, city lights blinking beyond the glass. He thought about all the moments before that night, the times he had noticed discomfort and chosen ease. The jokes he hadn't stopped. The comments he had brushed off because they didn't seem urgent. He understood something now that no business school had ever taught him. Silence sides with the oppressor. It always has. Love without protection is just a word people use when they're afraid of conflict. And real power, the kind that lasts, isn't about control. It's about courage. The courage to choose what's right, even when it costs you comfort. Even when it costs you family approval. Even when it changes how people see you. His wife joined him at the window. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, looking out at the city that never knew her story, but had felt its ripple. He reached for her hand again, the same way he had that night. This time, her hand didn't shake. I used to think keeping the peace meant staying quiet, he said. She looked at him, calm and steady. Peace built on silence isn't peace, she replied. It's fear, he nodded. Because he knew she was right. The billionaire didn't just defend his wife that night, he redefined his legacy. Not as a man who owned companies, but as a man who owned his choices. A man who learned, maybe later than he should have, that dignity is not something you give people when it's convenient. It's something you protect when it's under attack, and the lesson stayed long after the doors closed and the lights dimmed. Blood may connect you. Money may elevate you. But character is revealed by who you protect when no one forces you to.